Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Sergeant Jason Robillard. That's R-O-B-I-L-L-A-R-D. I'm with the Vancouver Police. I'm a media relations officer. An officer with the Vancouver Police Department was sent to hospital Tuesday night with significant injuries after he was assaulted during a routine traffic stop in downtown Vancouver. 3 suspects are now in custody. Just before 10 p.m., 2 patrol officers observed a Dodge Durango drive through an area of Granville Street that has restricted vehicle access. The officers initiated a traffic stop on Robson Street between Granville and Seymour Streets. All 3 men in the vehicle, in their early 20s, were confrontational and verbally abusive with the officers. The officers became concerned for their safety as the occupants refused to follow police direction and began reaching under the seat. When one officer opened the passenger door, the front passenger pulled him into the vehicle and 2 men began to punch him repeatedly in the face and head area. As the other officer rushed to help, all 3 men exited the vehicle and continued the assault the officers outside. The officers called for emergency backup, but before help arrived, one of the men rushed from the scene and was pursued by the uninjured officer. The suspect ran through a red light at Robson Street and Seymour Street and was struck by a vehicle. He continued to run until he was arrested by the pursuing officer on Richard Street between Robson and Smythe. This is an example of the risk all police officers face as they work to protect the citizens they serve. This sort of incident affects the entire policing community. We wish our officer a speedy recovery, and we'll ensure the officer and his family have the support they need. All 3 men have been arrested. 2 of the men are from West Vancouver, and 1 is from Victoria. Criminal charges including assault causing bodily harm, assault against a police officer, theft, and obstruction are pending. Other charges related to alcohol and drugs seized from the vehicle may also be laid. The man that ran from the scene was uninjured and was assessed at hospital and later released. The injured police officer is now recovering at home from his injuries. Any questions that you may have?
Can you speak about the specifics of the injuries to the officer? Concussion, bruises?
I can say the injuries are to the head and face of the officer, and we would consider them to be substantial injuries.
Jason, there's a video that's circulating online by what appears to be a bystander, maybe an ERT or an EMT who responded to this. In that video, you kind of see this altercation back and forth at the vehicle itself, and even the guy filming says, "Are those real cops? Did police ID themselves properly? Were they plainclothes? What's proper protocol here, and what happened?"
Well, first of all, I can't comment on a video that I haven't seen. But what I can tell you is that there are officers that work in plain clothes, and these officers in this particular case were in plain clothes. They did pull this vehicle over with their emergency lights on their vehicle. They did identify themselves as police officers, and there's no doubt in my mind that the 3 occupants in the vehicle knew they were police officers, just from comments made and some evidence I've read.
When we look at sort of the aftermath later, again, this video, which I can show you after if you'd like, there's audio of the suspect, what appears to be one of the suspects on the ground being handcuffed, and you hear something like, "Why did you kick me in the stomach?" The video comes back up, and the person behind the video says to the officer, "Why did you kick him when he was already on the ground?" And the officer's response on video was, stand by here, "He severely assaulted my partner and he's combative." Can you shed a little light on what happened during that?
Again, I haven't seen the video, and it just wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on a video that I haven't seen. This case is before the courts. We're waiting and pending charges on 3 individuals that are quite violent. One of our officers was substantially injured, and he's recovering at home. So we can't comment about something any more than what we have. That's something that's before the court.
Would it be appropriate for a police officer to kick a suspect who's being arrested on the ground?
If there's force used to defend themselves or to effect an arrest, that is very subjective, and there's a lot of different angles and avenues that are involved in assessing whether or not force is legitimate. In this case, three suspects have been charged with assaulting a police officer, assault causing bodily harm, obstruction, and theft.
When we talk about the suspects, is there any evidence that they may have been impaired? You mentioned potentially seizing drugs and alcohol from the car.
Yes, there is evidence of that.
Can you get into detail on that?
Not right now, but what we can tell you is that there was drugs and alcohol seized from inside the vehicle, and there is a potential for charges to be laid in relation to that.
So, sorry, I don't know if you mentioned this, but were the suspects known to police? Was there a criminal history there?
I can tell you that this started off as a routine traffic stop while these officers were on patrol, and it ended up to be a violent struggle where these officers were assaulted. One sustained substantial injuries. The three suspects in the vehicle, and I can safely say that all three are known and well known to police and have a history with police.
So did they know that before they pulled over? Like, was the vehicle kind
That
of
was
marked,
not
or?
known prior to pulling over the vehicle. This was simply a routine traffic stop for a minor traffic infraction that turned into an assault causing bodily harm, where one officer was dragged into a vehicle and punched repeatedly in his face and in his head and sustained injury.
What was it, like on the cell phone, running a light, or what was
What it was driving down an unauthorized portion of Granville Street that is not open to the public or public vehicles. They also had an N on the vehicle and restricted to only one occupant in the vehicle, and there were three. So it's a very minor traffic violation that they were pulled over for.
How unusual is it for something like this, which starts as routine, to escalate this and not become routine?
Well, you know what? Police work is never routine. We don't want to think that this is a routine traffic stop, but we do deal with hundreds of these traffic stops weekly. This one, unfortunately, turned ugly and turned assaultive to our officers. And in this case, they were defending themselves. We don't know what else could have happened. We're fortunate that it didn't go any further. However, one of our officers was injured substantially.
I've always been curious about this, and this may be a broader question, but who decides when patrol officers are in uniform or not? Why would you have plainclothes officers patrolling and doing traffic stops?
Well, we have officers that are in routine patrol that are deployed in plain clothes, and that's quite routine for us here at the Vancouver Police Department.
Why is that?
And we do that, I'm still answering here, we do that for a number of reasons here, and one is just to help us in our advantage when we're observing crime. It may be advantageous for us to get closer to an in-progress crime if we're in plain clothes as opposed to uniform. All our officers that are in plain clothes are equipped with a badge. They drive around in an unmarked police vehicle that is fully equipped with emergency equipment, lights and sirens. They have police takedown jackets on. So it is quite common for our officers to deploy in plain clothes.
To your knowledge, were all proper police protocols followed here? Is there any takeaway for the Vancouver Police from this incident?
What I can tell you is that in this case, we're looking at charges for assaulting a police officer. I am convinced that the occupants of the vehicle knew these were the police and continued to assault them.
Can you talk about the criminal history of these three suspects? I mean, do they have links to gangs at all?
I can't get into that other than just say they were known to police. The charges are pending approval from Crown Counsel. Hopefully charges are approved shortly, but we can't release anything further about the accused until charges have officially been approved by Crown Counsel.
Did they own the car legitimately?
I don't have that information.
Sergeant, could you just sort of explain, like, on a traffic stop like this, how an officer ends up inside the vehicle, what transpired physically?
In this particular case, the officer was pulled into the vehicle where two men continued and began to assault him by punching him in the face and in the head repeatedly.
What was the other officer doing during this time?
There was a third occupant in the vehicle, and the other officer was trying to protect his partner and himself.
And how long until other officers came? What happened after?
I don't have the time delay, but they called for emergency cover, emergency officers to come and assist them. And during the time that they requested this over the police radio, one of the suspects took off running. The uninjured officer chose to pursue him and was able to arrest him several blocks away.
Could you speak a bit about the mood in the department today? I mean, I know it's a difficult time when something like this happens for officers. Could you explain what it was like today for other officers?
Well, for us here at the department, this is a very serious call. Our officers put their lives on the line every day, and not just Vancouver police officers, but patrol officers and any police officer throughout the country. This is another example of our officers doing that, and one officer here sustained substantial injuries. We're out there trying to keep the citizens safe. And these officers were defending themselves during a routine traffic stop, and this stop turned very violent very quick. And this wasn't our officers perpetuating this. This was a routine traffic stop for a very minor traffic infraction. At one point during the stop, I can add that one of the passengers lit a cigarette and blew the smoke into the face of one of the officers. To me, that's confrontational, that's disrespectful, and that caused a lot of what happened here. So this is the attitude of the three occupants that our officers were dealing with, and it escalated quite quickly, and one of our officers is substantially injured, and we're all concerned about this.
Is he in hospital? I mean, can you please elaborate on his injuries?
What I can say is he has injuries about the face and head. He has been released, but will be reassessed by a doctor at a later point.
Any timeline for his potential return, or how long he'll be out?
I can't get into the specifics, just due to privacy reasons, but what I can tell you is that he did sustain substantial injuries, and he was injured, and I would describe it as seriously injured.
You sort of touched on it already, but what does it do for the psyche of your officers?
Well, we're all concerned, first of all, about the injured officer, but secondly, it's a reminder for all of us that are police officers, especially frontline officers, that our job is not safe sometimes, and we are risking our personal safety sometimes in order to keep the citizens that we police safe. So it's a reminder for us on a day-to-day that, a routine traffic stop can turn very violent very quickly. So we need to be aware of that. But we train for these types of situations, and we are prepared for it. And unfortunately, this happened the way it was. And these three accused chose to get violent with two officers, and it's very unfortunate. But they are now recommended charges for some very serious charges against them.
How are the three suspects doing health-wise? I think in the video, one of them was hit by a pickup truck. Do you know how their health is?
Yeah, the one accused that fled from the scene that was pursued by the uninjured officer, he was treated and assessed at hospital and later released uninjured. No other injuries were reported from any of the accused.
Sergeant, just a reminder of what to do if you're stopped by police in traffic. I mean, you hear people go, don't reach for the glove compartment, don't go under the seat. What do you do? How do you follow directions? Make sure no one gets hurt.
It's quite simple. Follow directions. That's it. I mean, the officers here in this particular case, they just were not following directions from the initial start. It was quite obvious that they wanted a confrontation with the officers. If it's quite easy for you just to follow directions. It's a simple traffic stop. We do hundreds of these on a weekly basis that are quite routine for us. This one was not routine, and this one turned violent very quickly.
How old were the suspects?
All in their early 20s. Okay, thank you.